Hello, my name is Simonaz and welcome to another Simonaz Guide video. Today I'll be covering the best fire resistance gear for DPS rogues in Season of Discovery. Because the heat levels in Molten Core require certain amounts of fire resistance, knowing the best items to use to achieve that is basically the gearing game for this phase. We're looking for the most efficient pieces that give the most resistance for the least DPS loss. I'll cover both pre-raid gear options for fire resistance and raid best in slot sets that reach 0, 96, or 226 fire resistance for heat levels 1, 2, or 3 while maintaining the highest damage output possible. Because we aren't all suited up in raid gear yet, let's start by considering what you could get to go into your first or second Molten Core raids. If you're attempting the raid on heat level 1, there is no fire resistance requirement at all. On heat level 2, you must have at least 96 fire resistance or you are prone to getting one shot by just about anything. For heat level 3, the number is 226 fire resistance. When considering which pieces you want to use for fire resist, you want to gain the most resistance while losing the least DPS possible. Items like Masterwork Volcanic Shoulders or Wildfire Cape have a lot of resistance on them, but literally zero boost to your DPS. These can help you reach the required amounts of fire resistance if you're struggling to do so, but they are not items you want to be using since they incur such a large DPS loss. I've taken many of the best fire resistance items and enchants and ranked them according to their ratio of fire resistance gained versus DPS lost in the simulator, compared to a 8 of 8 Dark Mantle pre-raid set. The items at the top of the list are best and most efficient. These are the things you want to be using. I also compared the same fire resistance items against a raid best in slot set, and the rankings were mostly the same. The good items are pretty much the good items, regardless if you're comparing against a raid set or a pre-raid set. The epic crafted Devil Core items and thick Corehound boots, as well as the enchants Hydraxian Coronation for your cloak and Lesser Arcanum of Resilience for your head and legs are really the standout pieces. If you aren't getting these, you are really hindering your ability to put together a reasonable fire resistance set. Blessed Flame Mantle of the Dawn is another really good option, but it is extremely time consuming to get. Grinding out Exalted status with the Argent Dawn is no easy task. I certainly wouldn't prioritize doing that over doing other things right now. Moving on from the best and most desirable items to use, this page shows a few items that offer a lot of resistance but incur a larger DPS loss per point of resistance gained. These are not ideal, but using them is definitely better than going in without the required resistance levels and instantly dying. There are two particular items I want to talk about, and the first is Flask of Chromatic Resistance, which is special because it is by far the worst source of resistance of all the items I examined. I see this being recommended a lot, but you should not use this item in your Rogue's Fire Resistance set, and you should continue using Flask of Supreme Power to boost up the damage of your Envenom and Dragon Breath Chili. The second item is Juju Ember. This is a consumable item that gives you a 10-minute buff for plus 15 fire resistance. It can be quite painful to continually refresh these, and you'll need a big stockpile of them if you choose to rely on this, but you don't sacrifice any DPS stats in order to gain this. These basically cost you gold and time for fire resistance instead of DPS for fire resistance like most of the other stuff we're talking about. Another important note is that Juju Ember is a magic type buff, which means the boss Gar will occasionally dispel it from your character. If that happens and you don't refresh it right away or don't even notice that it got dispelled, you may fall below your resistance threshold and get killed unexpectedly. Finally, we have a group of buffs that provide some resistance, but none of the buffs in this category stack. You can only benefit from one of these at a time, and they each have some considerations. Mark of the Wild is the safest, offering plus 27 resistance, but it has the same weakness as Juju Ember. It's a magic type buff, so Gar can dispel it. On every other boss, it's totally fine to rely on this. Magic Resistance Potion is another magic type buff and offers more resistance to the Mark of the Wild with plus 50, but it consumes your potion cooldown. If you are using Magic Resistance Potion to reach your resistance threshold, you won't be able to use stuff like Free Action Potion or Greater Fire Protection Potion when you want to. I'd suggest staying away from this. Finally, we have the Paladin Aura and Shaman Totems providing a whopping 60 resistance. That is a lot of resistance, but I think they are the biggest trap on this whole list. Many of the Molten Core bosses have mechanics requiring players to spread out, or they fear you, or they knock you all around the room with big knockbacks. This can cause you to be out of range of your Paladin Aura or Shaman Totem, losing the resistance and winding up instantly dead. These buffs also go away if the Paladin or Shaman providing them dies for any reason. So one person dies, then everyone who relied on that resistance will die shortly after. I strongly recommend not relying on these resistance buffs to reach required resistance levels. So now you know what the good fire resistance items to get are. Let's look at some sets for heat level 2 and level 3. All of these sets will be linked in the video description. Heat level 2 should be very easy to obtain and incur a very small DPS loss compared to your regular gear. 2 Lesser Arcanum of Resilience enchants plus a Hydraxian Coronation puts you at 60 already. Add in the Royal Seal of Eldrith the Lost and a Mark of the Wild, and you're at 97 and you're ready to rock and roll. Facing off against Gar, you won't want to rely on Mark of the Wild. You could take a Lava Belt with plus 26 or the upgraded version Lava Walker Belt with plus 30 to put you over the limit. There are a lot of ways to reach 96 fire resistance without sacrificing much in the way of DPS stats. If you can afford them, getting either thick Corehound boots or the Devil Core set, or both, is a great idea. They make 96 fire resistance happen basically without thinking about it, and you will definitely want these for a Heat 3 set that's trying to reach 226 fire resistance. A lot of the raid gear has fire resistance on it and can help you reach your resistance goals, but we don't have all of that yet. Here's a really exceptional set of gear accessible pre-raid that gets you ready for heat level 3. You'll be able to make significant improvements to this set once you start filling in raid items like your tier set, Onyxia Tooth Pendant, or Ocean's Breeze Ring. With raid gear in mind, here's what a fully best in slot 226 fire resistance set looks like. It really only deviates from the non-fire resistance best in slot setup by the 2 pieces of Devil Core, Royal Seal, and the resistance enchants. This same set of gear could be used for a Saber Slash setup as well, just swapping the weapons out to ones appropriate for Saber Slash. If you're sticking with Mutilate, there's an alternative setup as well that uses thick Corehound boots, Cloak of Shrouded Mists, and Aged Core leather gloves instead of the Devil Core items. According to our DPS simulator, this setup is nearly identical in performance to the first one. Whichever items happen to make it into your bags first could decide which setup you want to go for. If your guild is not interested in doing heat level 3 and you only need 96 resistance or heat level 1 with no resistance requirement, that can be achieved with just the normal best in slot list thanks to the resistance present on most of the tier pieces. That will have you set up to be good for heat level 1 or 2, and you'll just need to swap a little bit more on for Gar on heat level 2, since you won't be able to rely on Mark of the Wild resistance there. That should be about all you need to know about gearing up for the heat levels in Molten Core on your rogue in Season of Discovery. I hope this guide has been helpful, teaching you how to pick the good pieces of fire resistance so you can still deal a lot of damage and not look like a potato in your raid. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having fun in World of Warcraft, and I hope you have a great day.